Welcome to Camera Shake Podcast, episode 108, the podcast where we talk about photography, videography, and anything that's got anything to do with any of that.
Or none of that.
Or none of that, as it were. Now, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, then you may have already figured out that due to its vastly superior audio quality, we are in fact back in the same room.
And you're back in the room.
And I'm back in the room.
Yeah.
Which would beam me in,
Yeah.
I think, at this point.
Yeah. All right, Scotty.
So yeah, back in the room, man. Back in the same country.
Yeah.
Well, hey.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's been a few weeks since we've actually been face to face.
Yeah, I was walking...
In any capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that walking up to your place, from the car. I'm like, I haven't been here in a month or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's been pleasant.
yeah. Peaceful.
You're very, very quiet. Yeah. No, that's good. You got your passport all sorted.
Yeah, finally.
And that's, it's important.
Bit of an odyssey, but...
Okay, here's a question for you. If you had to put a cost, including your time and physical cost as well, as to what this has cost you, what would you say it is?
I mean, I don't even want to add my time into it, but just if you think like the amount of flights, because I had to fly to Cologne and then I had to take trains, taxis, like literally, planes, trains, and automobiles to get to various places.
Good movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Get to various places to pick up, various bits of paper. And paying for paying for the express passport.
Oh yeah.
But then also paying for the emergency passport. And then also before that, I mean, I had to get various bills notarized and stuff, over here in the UK. So, it was the most expensive passport I've ever had.
Are we talking all in, hundreds of pounds, or have we crossed over into...
We crossed over into the thousand.
Oh, yeah. And how many days is this taking you to deal with?
Well, I mean, I was probably in Germany for 2 weeks. But, obviously it went on beforehand.
Yeah.
For a good 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, thankfully you could work while you're out there.
I could do some stuff,
at least in some capacity.
Yeah, true. I mean, there's lots of stuff I had to shift around, obviously. So that was, and I'm catching up on it now. So that's a little stressy over the next few weeks. But I was lucky that I had places to stay because, under normal circumstances, if I hadn't been able to stay with family, I would have had to foot that cost as well, so that doesn't even come into it. But, it was costly, but necessary, that's the thing.
That's it.
Because the thing, I think what people don't realize is that, for me, I mean, I'm a foreign citizen living in the UK, and so my passport is directly linked to my settlement status and all the rest of it. So it becomes more important than, I guess, if you're a German citizen, you live in Germany, you don't have a passport for a few months, it doesn't necessarily matter that much. I mean, same if you're like a UK citizen and you live here and you don't have a passport. I mean, it's not the end of the world, if you have to wait months, to get that. But, for me, it's different because I am a foreign citizen here. And, and so it has an impact on a number of different things. And so it was really important to get that sorted out. I think the one thing I've learned, other than obviously being aware of expiry dates and all that, is really I don't think I'll ever complain about British bureaucracy ever again.
Oh, you will.
Well, not after what I've experienced in Germany. That was a shocker. That really was incredible. First of all, the runaround, but also this reliance on paper still.
Yeah.
And the sort of total ignorance when it comes to technology is just unbelievable.
We do criticize our government a lot for these types of processes, but it's only people like you who have to deal with two different countries, right? Yeah. Who can really see the differences. And I would expect a country like Germany to be all over this type of thing.
Yes. Well,
and if they're not, maybe we're not so bad here with these type of processes.
No, I think there's a number of things actually that have become very apparent, and and also it's been a little bit of a reality check. Really, there were some simple things. I mean, first of all, the whole thing about like having to deal with paper forms when it comes to government things, and having to travel halfway across the country to pick up a police record that was essentially a blank piece of paper, because you had to do it in person. It's just that sort of thing seems ridiculous nowadays. I mean, you should be able to do that somehow electronically, or at least, they should be able to forward it electronically. But no, you have to actually show up in person, and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's one thing. But there were little things that I found really surprising. Like, I remember actually waiting for the plane at Stuttgart Airport, and there was a McDonald's there. And in good old Kammershake tradition, I had to clearly, sample the local produce. And, and I went, and it looks very much...
It tastes exactly the same.
Well, I mean, so, I went, I went and it looks exactly the same. Like they have the touchscreen ordering interfaces and all that kind of stuff. It's exactly the same. And I have some interesting additions to the menu, like the chili and cheese burger.
Cracking.
Yep. And a McRib, which is a permanent item on the menu. So that's...
Why is that in America and Germany, but not here? Explain that to me.
I really don't know. But, the McRib that's always been a staple part of the McDonald's menu ever since I was a kid. I mean, it's just like the Big Mac, So I don't know why that isn't here.
What the hell?
I guess, that's regional differences. I mean, the chili and cheese looked really interesting, but anyway, so without going into depth as far as the menu is concerned,
I don't know. I could spend an hour talking about McDonald's.
Well, I've already made a burger today, so I put in my order, and then when it came to payment, I was standing there with my Apple Watch and trying to pay. Nothing's happening. I'm thinking like, oh, that's weird. Well, maybe it doesn't work. So anyway, get my phone out. Hold my phone against the thing, and it's not working. And sometimes, I mean, even here, sometimes when you pay for a parking ticket, it doesn't really read the phone, and you have to then get out your card. Very occasionally that happens. And I kind of thought, maybe it's just something to do with that. So I get my my card out, I hold it against the reader thing, nothing. And then I notice is that they just don't have a tap function. So you have to literally stick your card in, punch in your PIN number.
God.
I know. And so, I was like, wow, that's
so 2020.
That's so 2016, yeah. But, it like immediately I kind of thought, oh man, how backwards is that? And it's like, yeah, that's incredible. But of course, the reality is, we've gotten used to this sort of technology really quickly.
The US are only just starting to get contactless.
Really? Okay.
In fact, I'm not even sure they do yet. They might have some, but they are only just starting to get... What the hell?
I can't remember. I just can't remember. I mean, last time...
I actually don't take my wallet out anymore.
No, me neither. I mean, this is the conversations I had with a couple of people.
I don't carry cash.
Yeah, I mean, so this was a real thing. Actually, this was a real thing in Germany. They really...
I do actually carry a penny with me at all times.
Yeah, well,
and that's literally just to put.
Well, to see a penny, pick it up all day long. You have to look.
That's it. And that's just to tie in plates onto the bottom of my camera. It's not for anything else.
So so the cash thing is really interesting because, so I think Apple Pay and stuff is starting to become possible in Germany, but it's not, but far not as prevalent as it is here. But the cash thing is really a thing. Like there are a lot of places where you can't pay by card, mainly small amounts. So for example, you go to the bakery, and they just don't take card, so you have to have cash. And so when
tax evaders,
well, no, it's just a thing. They just they don't want to pay the card fees or the transaction fees or whatever it is, whatever the reasoning is. Or maybe it's just distrust in technology, or I have no idea. But it's this thing where you have to handle cash, and then you get change, and I don't really know what to do with that change anymore because I don't have a wallet. So I basically, whenever I came back from some shopping endeavor or something, I would give all the coinage to my mom. Just, you have it? Just, I don't know where to put it. It's just in my pocket,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's different. And of course, the reality is it hasn't been that long that it was similar here. It's just we've gotten, maybe because of the pandemic, we've gotten used to not paying the cat really, really quickly. Because I remember, like, throughout the pandemic, there was literally a 2-year period where I didn't even touch a coin or a note or anything. I completely just used my phone. Of course, you didn't want to touch coins or anything like that, or banknotes or anything, because of fear of transmitting the virus and whatnot. But now I don't even take my cards out with me anymore. It's you have a phone, my Apple Watch, and that's it. It. So,
yeah. I mean, speaking of Apple, did you see their announcement that they're taking on like Klarna and whatever the other one's called? So you can now, if you pay for something using Apple Pay, you'll get the option to pay for it in interest-free installments.
I did not see that.
That's part of their announcement yesterday. Well, yesterday as we record this.
Right, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know when it's coming or which countries it's coming to. I'm guessing the US it will come to.
That's probably a good thing. I mean, you've always been able to finance stuff, through Apple. But that's a good,
cool, right?
That's good, cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it could be interesting. When you pay for all your McDonald's, just put all of that on the free monthly installments, and you can see how much you really spend on it.
Oof, I know how much I spent on McDonald's, or I did actually. I haven't indulged as much over the last month. So,
but they also announced the M2 chip.
Yeah, I saw that
finally, which I didn't really look at it too much because I have the M1 Max and I'm not changing it. So as I understand it, it's something like 25%. I read it quickly. It's something like 25% faster than the M1 chip.
So interesting thing, because I had a look at that. And so they're basically coming out with the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air.
Yep.
With the M2 chip. Okay. And we talk about the pricing there, which I find odd, but we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, imagine on the MacBook Pro, if you're working with like a photo editor like Affinity, you get a 40% speed increase.
Mm-hmm.
That's something, 40% that's pretty nifty. You can on the MacBook Pro, you can play back 11 streams of 4K or 2 streams of 8K video.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're that way inclined, then that's obviously an improvement. I'm not sure what the situation is on the M1 Max, but
I forget now.
But so that's a definitive speed increase there. For the MacBook Air, it's 20% faster in Photoshop and 38% faster in Final Cut. Which actually, I have to say, Final Cut runs very, very well, even on my
you're the last
2020
Intel, weren't you?
Yeah, it's the last Intel.
10 core or
is it 2020 or something like
that? Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's impressive. The other thing that's new is with the MacBook Air. There's a new 1080 camera, which apparently has double the resolution of the previous camera, and there's also some like software stuff that they've improved. So basically, it just gives you a better image, higher resolution on the built-in camera.
1080p.
But none of that may actually be relevant anymore because of another Apple announcement we'll talk about in a second. But let's come back to the pricing. So the pricing is very odd. So the new MacBook Pro with the M2 chip is going to retail for $1,299 US dollars, right? $1,299
base model.
Yeah, right. The MacBook Air starts at $1,199, so it's $100 difference. So that seems. Somebody explain that to me. Like if you're listening to this, I'm not an expert on these things at all, but that's $100. Like, what's the point?
What?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's that. So
I need one more.
Yeah.
So is that their way of saying the Mac? Is this their final MacBook Air? Is this their way of saying, you know what, we're bringing down the price of our MacBook Pros?
Well, so I mean, things are going to change anyway for Apple because
I've never really understood the point of both.
Today, actually, in fact, so this makes it 3 Apple announcements. But just I think today or yesterday or something, the EU announced they're moving forward with this new legislation to say that electronic devices from 2024 onwards will all have to have USB-C plugs.
Okay.
So that's going to be a EU directive, which basically means any. This is not retrospective, by the way. So any new models from then on. So any iPhones will not be able to use the Lightning connector anymore in the future. It'll all have to be USB-C. And of course, Apple originally
that's
were
fine.
very happy about that.
So, but I don't know why they wouldn't be happy. They've moved everything else anyway.
Yeah, I think that the argument is that generally speaking, that it stifles innovation because then as a manufacturer, you don't really have an opportunity to develop something that's better than USB-C. You're kind of stuck with that. And I can see that argument. But on the
argument I can see for sure.
On the flip side, the reason why the EU are bringing in this legislation is because they want to avoid, or they want to drastically reduce electronic waste.
No, this is the right thing to do. Standardization across these kind of ports has been crying out for a long time.
Absolutely.
But it has to have the flexibility that as soon as something better is created, that legislation is then passed, that from this point forward, so everyone's got time to adapt for several years, it doesn't matter what it is, it needs to be this.
Yeah, so there needs to be some kind of process, I guess.
Yeah. But, and everybody needs, I don't know if everybody listening or watching understands what USB-C actually means. USB-C is just the connector type.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah.
That's all it is. You can have 2 different type of cables with the same connector type on the end. This is where it gets confusing because it's not really happened before like that. So you can have a USB-C connector, which I think everybody's probably familiar with now. And the 2 different types of cable you can come off it, and they're very different, is a Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 cable. And I'm probably missing Thunderbolt 2. Just forgive me, I'm trying to give a general principle across, which are super fast. If I remember rightly, Thunderbolt 4 is, or 3 or 4 is like 40 gigabits. I forget. Well, it doesn't matter. It's fast. And that's related to, that's Mac. You can also have USB 3.1, 3.2, whatever it is. Again, I forget. Just forgive me the terminology. You get the point, go research it yourselves. That is fast too, but not as fast. So if you want to, for example, my UAD interface that I use has to have a Thunderbolt 4 connection with a USB-C connector. It cannot use a cable which is a USB-C connector and a USB 3 point whatever it is cable. It won't work because it's not fast enough.
Right, and so it also has something to do with powering a device because
that too.
So when we first tried out the VideoMic Go, the Rode VideoMic Go 2s, I actually bought the wrong cable to connect it to my phone. Because the great thing about the VideoMic 2 is that you can use it, you can connect it to your laptop or your computer, you can connect to your camera, but you can also connect to your phone. So if you're a content creator and you're filming stuff with your phone, or you're using it for FaceTime and you want to get better audio, whatever, you can connect the VideoMic Go 2 to your phone, which in itself is awesome. And you can then, because the mic itself doesn't have any buttons on it, you can't change any settings, but you can then use the Rode software, the app on the phone to change a lot of settings, which is wicked. Awesome idea. Phenomenal. But I bought the wrong USB-C cable and it didn't power the mic. Ticking, and so it didn't work. So,
what did it need and what did you get? Can you remember?
I just got a cheap USB-C cable. So basically, I looked on the Rode website, and the USB-C cable they were selling was like quite expensive. And then obviously, I went onto Amazon. And so I got a cheaper one because I'm a cheapskate. And then I probably wondering why it's not working, And it's simply not powering the mic. That's all.
Don't cheap out people.
Because again, one of the clever things, in a sense, about the Rode VideoMic Go 2 is the fact that it doesn't have a battery in it. So it's actually your device that's powering it, which is very cool. I mean, as somebody who's used the VideoMic Pro for many years, and but not only we've been in situations where we're filming, on set, and before you know it, the damn battery light goes red, and you go, anybody got a 9-volt battery? Oh, damn it.
No,
exactly.
No, nobody does. Unless you're a musician and you run pedals.
Yes.
Well, and even now, I haven't used a 9-volt in years.
Exactly. So that is one thing. The other thing is also like the battery door on the VideoMic Pro.
Has anyone got a smoke detector in the house?
It's like it's such a pain in the backside especially to shut again. So you get your fingers pinched, and it's just not that well designed. So having a mic that sounds as good, if not better, that doesn't require any battery power, is actually a godsend.
Yeah.
So if you're just using that mic, again, as a Zoom mic, or as a FaceTime mic, or use it on top of your camera or something like that, you don't need to power it.
That's it.
With a battery. It was just fantastic.
Great. And we're going to put those through its paces at some point soon, right?
Yes.
The new video mic versus your classic, for example.
Exactly. So we're gonna do a number of things. So we've talked about the VideoMic Go 2 in one of the previous episodes a few weeks ago. So if you want to get some more info, check that out. But we're going to do a full-on test of those in the not too distant future. So if you're interested in that, keep watching.
Good sound.
So we've basically, right, so I said there are 3 Apple announcements then. There's the Apple M2 chip. There is the slight, I don't know, the slight argument with the EU. But there's also another announcement that I actually thought was really interesting. In fact, I thought it was even more interesting than the M2 thing. And that's the fact that Apple have announced that very soon the iPhone camera is going to get a new function, which they call continuity camera.
Right, I have not seen this at all.
Right, okay, so this is going to be cool. Which is why
I've been too busy the last sort of 24 hours to keep up with any of this.
Which is why possibly the resolution on your laptop camera or on your webcam might become totally irrelevant, because continuity camera is designed to allow an iPhone and macOS to work together so that you can use your iPhone as a webcam. And so what it does is it basically means you can mount your iPhone on the screen, and they've been working together with some third-party companies like Belkin, for example, to create different mounts. So you can basically mount your iPhone on your laptop screen, and then you can use your not only can you use your iPhone camera as a webcam, and I'm talking the back camera, not the front camera. Or the front camera, whichever way you look at it.
Well, the better camera's on the back.
Not what they call the FaceTime camera. I mean the better camera,
the proper one.
Yeah. But it has what they call desk view, which basically gives you an ultra wide top down angle, which they say is super useful for like video presentations and stuff like that. Okay. It also has handoff built in, which we already know from a number of different devices.
Where was this at the start of the pandemic? Apple.
I know, right?
Apple.
I know. Well, this is.
I love this.
Yeah,
I love this, and
exactly.
For some weird reason, it's never really crossed my mind to use my phone as a webcam.
Well, I mean, it has crossed my mind. It did actually cross my mind. Weirdly, purely coincidentally, I was thinking about exactly that when I was sitting in Germany with my 2011, whatever it is, MacBook Pro and a 720 webcam on it.
Hey, it looks great for a potato.
Yes, it did look great for a potato.
Yeah.
But the reality was, of course, I was in there with my old school MacBook, and we're having to film these couple of episodes in that way, and and had I had that functionality on my iPhone, then that would have been very cool, because it would have enhanced the visuals on my side. It was interesting, just by us being on the Zoom session and and comparing the image that you got sitting here and the quality of the image that I got in Germany on my is it 2011? No, it's a 20. Yeah, it must be 2011 or 2012.
2012 your laptop is, yep.
So,
But it's the early 2012s before they took that big leap.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, it's a
but
720 webcam anyway on it.
Even the webcam on my MacBook Pro, because my previous MacBook Pro, which was a year before, I think, your iMac, so it's still Intel, it's one of those ones, had, I think it was a 720 on it, and it was crap. It was awful. So at the time, I was pandemic hit, and I thought, I'm on Zoom constantly at that point. So I got myself a third-party webcam, 1080p webcam, Belkin.
Oh,
maybe?
yeah, I remember actually. I remember.
Is it Belkin? Maybe it's. No, I forget. I forget exactly what it was now. Anyway, it's good. It's really good. Highly recommended, and used that, and it's fine. Worked well. But then when we started doing that session, just before we went live, I decided to, because I just put that on automatically, assuming it would be better. Put it on. Looks all right. Well, let me just try the internal camera, and I shifted it over the camera, and the built-in camera on the MacBook Pro was so much better.
Right.
So much better, clearer. The colors were more vibrant in the right way, had a much better contrast, and not overly contrast like some of these webcams do. I loved it. So I won't use unless I'm connected to an external screen, which I often am, and I need to be on quickly, then I've got that over the top.
So I had the exact same experience when I switched from my old MacBook to an iMac. And there were two things. First of all, the camera on the iMac is a 1080 camera. It's vastly, vastly superior to my old MacBook Pro, obviously. But also, it's a wider, it's a wider view. So when you're in a Zoom call, for example, it's like it doesn't look like you're either touching the screen with your nose. It's like it's not a closely cropped headshot, but it's actually, you got a much wider kind of angle, which is good.
That is nice. That is much nicer, isn't it? I do think they're too wide often. It certainly feels like it. I felt like my camera was quite wide, and I had to move myself in quite close to my screen to try and reduce a little bit of the...
So that's... I find it really useful because often in those kind of Zoom calls, and especially when it's like networking meetings or whatever, and you have some kind of Zoom background and you have some information on the Zoom background, like contact details or your business name or whatever, it's actually quite good if you're not as big in the screen because you have more real estate to put stuff on.
Yeah, sure.
So in that respect, I've preferred that. So when and again, when I am in those kind of meetings, and I see other people in a meeting, and you could tell who's using a laptop and who isn't, basically, just by looking at the angle and how much space they take up on the screen.
That's cool.
So it's really quite useful. But so that's I thought that was, for me, that was even that a bit of Apple news was even more exciting than the M2 chip, because I don't think I'll be upgrading my my iMac or anything anytime soon.
No.
Maybe I'm thinking maybe in a year's time or something, but not just yet. Because basically there's no need.
No, that's it. And quick score update, because England are playing Germany right now, so we have vested interest in this. It's almost half time. It looks like we're well into injury time, and it's still 0-0.
Oh, damn it!
Just saying.
Is it the kind of game where you can have a tie or not?
You can on this one, this match, yeah.
Right. It was a rare occasion when I was in Germany recently where I did watch a football match, and it was one of these,
But you call it a football game, don't you?
I probably did. Yeah. I probably did.
Go sports.
But well, I had a choice between a basketball game and a football match, and so for some reason the football won. But it was one of these, where you go into extra time and then you go into like the penalty shootout afterwards, which was quite, it was thrilling. Yeah,
the thriller in Manila.
Yeah. Oh. Anyway.
There we go.
Yeah, so Germany. Well, I went to Germany. You've just come back from Santorini.
Mm-hmm. I did. And do you know what I didn't do?
Go to the beach.
I didn't go into... Well, no. So I took loads of holiday photos. Tons of them. Loads.
Yeah.
Loads and loads and loads. But I didn't go out of my way to take photos.
Right, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And there is a reason for it. And the reason was because, frankly, I just wanted to enjoy my holiday. It's my first time out of the country in 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not wasting my time going and spending half an hour, setting up a good photo, all of that, waiting for the right, all the usual shebang. And so I deliberately didn't take my travel tripod with me.
Okay.
I just took my R6 and a 35mm.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Good.
I did take the new video mic with me.
Okay.
Just in case I had the opportunity to...
Just in case you were going to vlog.
To do something.
Yeah.
But the opportunity didn't really present itself. And I was in the moment and enjoying the company and having fun.
There's a lot to be said for that. And I know this because...
But I've still come away with some cracking photos, actually.
Yeah, but I've had these conversations with my wife many times when we've gone somewhere, because I think, the reality is the minute you start thinking like a photographer when you're on holiday, especially with your partner or your wife or whatever, your wife immediately turns into photographer widow.
Yeah. It's a problem for the people you're with.
Yes,
it really is.
And I can understand that that's not, that's maybe not the most pleasant thing, and so, yeah, I can understand that because that's, I find that as well. I mean, that incidentally, that's exactly why, a few years ago, I bought, the little Fuji X100F for exactly that reason, because I didn't want to take, all my gear with me. I wanted to, have a camera that's quick and easy, no lenses to worry about, none of the extra kerfuffle that you have to take and all that kind of stuff. Something that you can actually use like a tourist in a way. But that would still give me a little bit more, not flexibility necessarily, but it's just more fun to use, I think. That's the thing. Yeah. Because I found exactly that. Whenever we went on family outings or something, and I'd take, my Nikon and a bunch of extra lenses and all that kind of stuff, actually, that thing stayed in my backpack for most of the time.
Yeah.
And then, I sort of got to the point where I thought, like, well, why am I dragging this around with me, And so I wanted something that's actually just more fun, and that's the thing I love about Fuji's is it's just the way they feel and the way they handle is so different from, Nikon's, although Nikon, about a year ago, brought out a bit of a retro styled,
true.
Crop sensor camera, which I'd be really interested in trying out as well for the same reason.
Absolutely.
Like actual physical dials and all the rest of it. So that's, I totally dig that. And it's difficult. In fact, I went, only a couple of days ago, I went to the South Bank in London with my wife and my daughter, just on a day out. We just thought, we'll go into London on Saturday, spend a day at the South Bank. It was like Jubilee stuff going on, and we just thought we'd hang out. I've just forgotten how much I love that area of London, that part of London, just along the river. You can just hang out.
Oh, yeah.
There's street performers. There's, ice cream. There's like different food stalls. There's a really awesome non-alcoholic cocktail van type of thing.
Sounds awful.
Oh no, it's wicked, man. It's awesome. And then of course, you're by the river, and then you're also right by the Tate Modern. And so we did, that's what we did basically. We got out at Waterloo Station, hung out at the South Bank, walked along the river, went to the Tate Modern, had a cruise around there.
Yeah.
And all the while, I kind of thought, you know what? I take my Fuji with me. If there's an opportunity to take some cool pictures, maybe some street photo kind of stuff, then great. And really, you're there with like your wife and your family, and it's not really the right time to take street photos. You know what I mean?
No, it's not.
But when we got to the Tate Modern, I did get some awesome shots. So it was worth it. I came back with something that I thought, wow, this is cool. And also I spent a lot of time, especially on the tube, redesigning some Fuji color presets, like some LUTs or whatever you call it. And that was really super fun. And I kind of came up with a black and white preset and a color preset that I really love. So so that are more street photography trips, I think, to come, where I think I just want to focus on one of those. It's a really contrasty black and white thing that I came up with that looks awesome in almost every situation. It's really quite, punchy, and then there's like a color profile which has a real retro look to it, and it really emphasizes the blues, which I typically never do. So anybody who looks at my color editing, I tend to desaturate the blues.
Right.
But not with this one. This one has just a really beautiful way of rendering the blues. So it's...
Have you moved the blues to more of the sort of teal aqua kind of range? Because that always feels very retro and vintage.
Yeah, a tiny little bit. Yeah. So that's basically, I mean, it's a combination of different things. And so there's a little bit of that, but not too much. But it's also, it's basically mainly sort of a combination of boosting the blues a little bit, but also setting the white balance much warmer than you would ordinarily do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and actually I started out with about 10,000 Kelvin. And then I sort of dialed that down a little bit to probably about 6,000, 7,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sort of base setting as far as the white balance is concerned for that. And so everything is just warm, but the blues are punchy. It's got a really cool kind of retro look. And actually it doesn't make the skin tones look ugly. And that's because I was experimenting with sort of different ways of getting this retro look. But what I found is, it'll look great on buildings, or like, where you have some sky and you've got some concrete and stuff, it look awesome. And even with greens, like with trees or foliage or something, it'll still look good. But then as soon as you have people in the image, the skin tones look really off. So it was just kind of getting that sort of balance that you can basically use it, no matter whether you have people in the image or not. It was that kind of just getting the balance right. And it took a little bit of just sort of experimenting. And so I think what I'm looking forward to is actually just going into town maybe and just literally just for the purpose of doing some street photography, and then maybe just focusing on the black and white idea, and then another day, completely separate day, just focusing on a color idea.
Did you find that as you were creating that you had that you found that it works in better in certain circumstances, that what's the best way to phrase this, like where your exposure is nailed on in a certain way, or it's slightly underexposed, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. So that was a consideration. So there were really two considerations there. This is true for the black and white color profile and for the color profile. There were two considerations. One, I wanted it to work whether there were people in the picture or not. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing. And the other thing was I wanted it to work almost regardless of whether you were perfectly exposed, slightly under or slightly over. Mm-hmm. Because some, there are a lot of like black and white profiles that work really well when you're like a stop over or half a stop over or something like that. And then they really fall apart when you have a stop under, right? So, you know what I mean? And then others that really only work when you're pretty much bang on. And then as soon as you go half a stop over, the thing just doesn't look great anymore. So a lot of the profiles that I've come across are really quite specific.
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you've already got a high contrast raw image where or you've got quite a flat image depending on what you're photographing.
Yeah.
How does that kind of
so the other consideration was that I wanted to shoot a JPEG. So this was the idea, was to create something that requires little to no post-production. Literally, really like a film simulation type of thing. That basically allows you to shoot in JPEG, so that straight out of camera you get these really gorgeous tones. So that was the idea, because my thinking was, if I'm taking this camera and I'm going out and I'm doing some street photography, and I'm trying to, I'm thinking about composition and this and the other. I mean, really, what I actually don't want to do is then go and edit or spend lots of time editing and, afterwards. So I wanted to find something that was actually going to be cool, so that I could reasonably shoot in JPEG. Because, remember, I mean, even in JPEG, you have some flexibility. It doesn't mean you can't add them afterwards, and there's always stuff like maybe you want to retouch out or something like that, whatever. Yeah, sure. But, in principle, something that would give me a look across a whole series of photographs. So, if you imagine imagine you go into town, you want to do some street photography, and you take, 200 pictures, let's say, right? For argument's sake. And you want all of those to look like they belong together in terms of tonality, and in terms of color, and so that you don't have to actually go in and slap another look on it and edit every individual image or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and depending on how you set these color profiles up, you can really either make that spectrum really narrow so that it really only works in a very specific circumstances. Take, for instance, like a lot of portrait type of color profiles, they'll really only work with a person in a photo. As soon as you shoot anything that's not a person, it looks shit.
Yeah.
And likewise, they're like things, black and white, profiles that are great on architecture. But the minute you put a person in there, it just all falls apart.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of finding that sort of balance. And I tell you what, actually, is really useful for. And of course, I'm talking specifically Fuji here. Although anything that I've just said, of course, in a sense, can apply to any brand of camera. But
of course.
But the reason why this is very Fuji specific is because I started out with a really cool app called Fuji Weekly. Okay, it's an app I found actually some years ago, and what that does, it's called Fuji X Weekly. So if you are a Fuji shooter, you can just go into the Apple App Store and look for Fuji X Weekly, and what it really is, it's a website of people who develop Fuji color profiles, right? And you can use them across all Fuji cameras, basically. And I say that with a caveat because it depends on what processor is in the camera. So, for instance,
of course.
So some color profiles work only with specific processors, and other profiles work across a number of processors and so on and so forth. So you just gotta be a little bit careful with that. So my camera is a Fuji X100F, which is not the most recent model, but the one before that. So that has the X-Trans 3 processor in there, whilst the Fuji X100V has the X-Trans 4 processor in it. So and what they've done is they've changed some of the parameters that you can set in those profiles. And so basically a color profile that was created originally for the X-Trans 4 processor won't necessarily work on the X-Trans 3. Okay. You're going to have to make some adjustments there.
That makes sense.
And it won't necessarily look 100% the same. But what's really cool about this app is actually there's a massive list of different profiles that either emulate different types of film or stuff like that. And, or different, whether they're, so you've like simulating Agfa Vista 100 or a Porta 200 or Kodak Porta 800 films or whatever it may be. So lots of different things that you can use as a starting point. And I found that really, really useful. And what's cool is it basically comes with some example pictures as well. So it gives you an idea as to what that's going to look like. And then you've got all the different settings in there. And then it tells you also which cameras, which processor, which sensor, and which, I should say sensor rather than processor, and which camera models you can use that with. So that's a really useful little thing. So what I literally did was, I went in, I had a look through a number of different color profiles in here, and then I used it as a starting point. And I found that really, really useful because you can experiment with different things and you can really see how different they are. I mean, you look at this one here, Provia 400, the blues are really quite strong.
Yep.
But then you look at some other ones, you can see the blues look much more tealy in these ones, right? And that's a really great way to, beautiful. The Kodachrome is just, love it. I love the blues in Kodachrome just generally. But yeah, so it's a really great way to get started. So if you do have a Fuji camera, if you're a Fuji shooter, check out Fuji X Weekly.
I wonder if there are apps for other brands.
That's a very good question. I don't know.
I'd be surprised if there aren't, if they've done it for Fuji. People have done it for Fuji.
It's a super awesome idea. I mean, Fuji X Weekly is actually a website. And so they've just basically brought this app, which is essentially just a collection. Idea. And it's not that you download these profiles and then upload them onto your camera or anything. It's basically just gives you the settings. Yeah. And you literally just go into your menu and then you set. You could use the presets basically in your Fuji, and you just set them up. And
how many user presets can you save?
I guess it depends on the camera. On the X100 F, it's 7.
Okay. It's not too bad, is it?
No, it really isn't. I mean, it's fine. I typically, I typically use 2. I have like a black and white preset and a color preset that I like.
Makes sense.
Although, no, actually, that's not true. I usually have 3 because I also have a video preset, and that's for basically the rare occasion when I do use my Fuji X100
for the 12 minutes that you can get out of it.
Well, I mean, in fact, when we went to when we met, that's it. When we met with Dave Williams back in Wales, I showed a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with that. And to be honest, again, the idea is, if I can make it look cool straight out of camera, then I don't really have to do that much editing. And really for that, it's great.
That's absolutely. If you can't shoot log, or you don't shoot log, or don't want to shoot log, that is absolutely the right thing to do. You get it looking as good as you can in camera with whatever profile makes sense for you. Exactly.
And with that, the reason why I decided I wanted to make those JPEGs look good, right? I should get a t-shirt. I shoot JPEG. Maybe not. I don't usually shoot JPEG, but in this situation, because the thing is, when you're, so the Fujis work really well when they connect to your phone, and you can transfer, photos to your phone, which is awesome because then you can, work on them in Lightroom Mobile or something like that. However, that only works with JPEGs. So when I know I'm going out and I might want to do some quick editing on my phone, always make sure that I at least shoot RAW plus JPEG.
Always, yep.
And to be honest, that's what I do all the time anyway. So even when I went on my little London trip the other day, I did shoot JAW plus JPEG.
One more time.
RAW plus JPEG. This is
He's had half a beer.
I've had half a beer. It just, because it's that kind of safety net. But that made me think that the next time we go out on a little street photography trip, I'm going to cut that safety net. I'm literally only going to go JPEG, and I'm literally only going to go one preset.
It's the only way you're going to fully explore these presets properly and understand its limitations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it's funny, for the first time with the R6, I was transferring photos to my phone while I was in Santorini.
Oh, yeah.
And doing some edits on Lightroom Mobile. Or mobile, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed it. But on your phone, I couldn't really tell much difference, if I'm honest. Mm-hmm. It's only when I got back and imported everything properly that I could see the difference in flexibility that I had.
Yeah.
Because for precisely the reason you just described, JPEG versus RAW. Now, what I got from the JPEGs was actually great.
Absolutely, 100%.
It was great.
Definitely.
And I'm using the Faithful. It's called Faithful, the picture profile on the R6 right now, because the others I felt haven't quite given me something I like the look of at all.
Yeah.
So I thought, for a JPEG perspective, that was it, and it looked closer to what it felt more natural.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Faithful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it really depends on what you want to achieve. Really, I think what I was trying to do was really to just get really like a film-like look, and so I wanted to stylize the images to quite a degree, because the built-in film simulations in the Fuji are actually really good.
Yeah,
the ProVR and the monochrome and the I forget the Kodachrome and stuff like that. The Kodachrome is probably one of the best ones. They're all really, really good. It's just because you have the flexibility of actually adding stuff to them.
Yeah.
And so you can really start to, in a weird way, because the camera feels like a film camera and it looks like a film camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of almost want the end result to look like it was shot on film in a weird way, right? Although you're doing it on a digital, medium. So it's just a bit of...
I strive for with every little bit of actual filming that I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it's a bit of...
I don't want it to look digital. It looks rubbish.
It's a bit of like vintage retro. I mean, it depends on the application. Of course, we're talking about... This is really, we're talking about fun photography, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of course, in a lot of more professional settings, of course, the thinking is a completely different one. We've talked about this many times. With a lot of stuff that I do, for example, I shoot for the edit. So I know what I need it to be so that I have maximum flexibility in post-production. That's a different way of shooting. The images don't necessarily look amazing straight out of camera, but I shoot them in a very particular way because I know that I have that flexibility later on because I already know what I'm going to do with it in post, and that's really the polar opposite of what I was trying to do, by setting up these kind of color profiles.
Absolutely.
So it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing. I urge anybody, if you want to inject some fun back into your photography, try out something like that. Something that's a little bit different from what you'd normally do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of doing that. I've never really messed around doing too much of that because I've never really used my JPEGs all that much.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing to be doing, particularly, if you're looking at the back of your camera on your screen. What's that showing you when you've taken a picture?
Oh, it's a JPEG. Yeah,
it's showing you the JPEG, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you may as well have that showing you as close to what you want it to look like to begin with, to know whether you're in the right ballpark with your settings and your...
And the fun thing about this is that when I looked at the images on the back of the screen, I actually thought they look good. Yeah, they look really cool, blah, blah. But then when I imported them onto my phone, they look really good. Yeah. And, at that point, I kind of thought, wow, these JPEGs actually...
It's funny, isn't it? I was in... so I went to the pageant Jubilee thing on Sunday in central London.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, the military going around.
Did you see Queen?
That was the party in the party in the palace the night before. Paula went to that, though.
Oh, right.
She was right in front. Yeah.
Cool.
Now, so lucky. And one of the things, I was importing sort of photos onto my phone here and there while I was on, at the pageant thing on the Sunday. And I've completely forgotten where I was going with this. What did you just say?
Queen?
No, before that?
No idea.
Where was I going with this?
I don't know, JPEGs?
I don't know. I've totally forgotten. I've completely lost my train of thought. Completely lost it. Anyway.
So that's an example of the black and white profile.
Lovely.
And we'll put that on the screen for those of you who are watching us on YouTube.
We might. We'll see.
Again, I'm really liking the kind of contrastiness of it, and the fact that the whites are just ever so slightly gray, but then the colors on that color. See that blue? That's...
And what I'm looking at, are they before any editing?
There's no editing.
That's just that.
Straight out of camera. So this is a really good example of the color, just the straight out of camera. There's no editing on this whatsoever. I just love the tones.
Yeah.
And there's just something about that.
A bit of basic editing, right? And I'm talking just exposure and contrast and...
Yeah. There's just something very pleasing about these blues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there are.
As I said.
And that feels like the blues I was talking about that have just been moved ever so slightly towards the teal range, but and I'm talking it is ever so slightly, right?
Yeah. And you're kind of crunching the highlights a little bit so the whites go into that very light gray almost.
Did you push any kind of orange yellow into the highlights at all? Orange yellow, or is it red that you normally magenta that you normally push into? Okay,
so no, what I tend to do a lot is I push reds into the shadows.
Reds into the shadows. Okay.
That's when I think was it in the last episode we're talking about car photography. So that was how I dealt with that look. Basically, that had some red tones in the shadows, and there's something that happens to the blacks when you're just increasing the red content just a tiny little bit.
Yeah.
And again, this is really something that, it's like I mentioned earlier, for me personally, that works really well when you're looking at cars or objects, and it gives it a slight retro vibe and, for the lack of a better word, a slight filmic look or something. It doesn't really work very well when you have skin tones in the image, So I think that for me that's sort of one of those things. There's a very, these sort of editing techniques are very specific to your subject.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, typically with 99.9% of the stuff that I shoot, I desaturate the blues. Normally, for just about anything. Denim, which, as we know, I love. Denim actually looks so much better when you start to desaturate the blues and bring up the mid-range contrast a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you get something that looks really, that has texture, and it has punch, and all that kind of stuff.
See, that kind of punch doesn't look good with too much saturation in that particular. It doesn't. It kind of. It almost becomes offensive.
Well, exactly. No, it does. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, at the minute you wear multiple items of denim, or not necessarily even wear multiple items of denim.
No. Hang on. No one else in this world wears multiple items of denim at once, other than you.
Wait a minute. But even if there's multiple tones of blue in the image, like let's say you have two people, one of them was wearing a denim shirt, the other was wearing denim pants or something, right? So those blues are slightly different, or even that sky in the image as well. So all these tones of blues are slightly different, and so if you were to saturate that, it would just look horrible, right? In my view, anyway.
Yeah.
So by desaturating the blues, you're taking some color out of the sky, of course, but you're sort of emphasizing anything else that's happening in the sky, like clouds, for example, or whatever. And you're sort of almost like creating some more contrast there. And then as far as denim in particular is concerned, for me personally, denim is one of my favorite materials to photograph. I love photographing denim. There's just so much texture in that, and micro contrast or whatever. It just, your denim looks good on anybody in a photograph. It's the thing.
I question that, but but just because you desaturate the blues in general doesn't mean you can't bring it back in other areas of the photo, right?
Oh, no,
with
of course you
with any kind of mask, and there are circumstances where actually desaturating is the right thing to do.
True,
but bringing them back in. It might be the sky is really important to your photo, and actually desaturating is the wrong thing
for sure.
to do, potentially.
The best thing, in my view anyway, about desaturating the blues, though, is that it has zero impact on the skin tones.
Here's a question. Yes, absolutely.
So, no matter what, because the minute you start desaturating oranges or yellows or reds, it immediately has an effect on the skin tones, because these are the tones that you find in human skin, regardless of your race or creed or whatever, right? It doesn't matter whether you're, European or African or whatever, or Asian or whatnot. It's our human skin tones are very close together on the color wheel, very, very close together. So they all sit in the orange range essentially. And so by desaturating the oranges, the yellows, and the reds, you'll immediately see an impact on the skin tone.
Oh, yeah.
Blues, on the other hand, don't do that, because there's literally zero blue tones in somebody's skin, which is why, of course, blue screens are used in compositing in film.
That's right.
And it's really, as far as I remember, it's only because of the prevalence of denim, actually, that I switched to green screen, because people wear a lot of blues, so that kind of sucked, But as far as skin tone is concerned, it's desaturating blues is a really safe bet, because in a portrait situation when you have a person in the picture, sort of thing, and so that's just the look that I personally like. This is total personal preference, by the way. So try it out if you haven't. Maybe you agree. Maybe that's something that you do, or maybe you disagree, and that's cool, because obviously everybody's got a different style and people have different preferences, and that's perfectly awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a really stylized shots I saw the other day that are really punchy and really, really colorful, that I also love, but that's just not my style, I guess.
No.
Or style of preference, either style, I don't know. Either preference.
Skin tone is interesting. When you're starting out, your automatic assumption is that different colored skin will fall differently on the color wheel, and the reality is it's not what happens, right?
Yes, you'd be really surprised.
And that is why there is a very specific skin tone line on a vector scope for video.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Because it all falls there, and that's pretty much because guess what we've all got inside us? Blood.
Skin.
And actual skin. Yeah. The pigment really doesn't make much difference at all, if any.
Yeah, surprising,
right?
Yeah.
So it's that's just, there you go. 2 pennies.
That's it.
We love those.
So yeah, I mean, it was that was an interesting experience. So question for you, if you're listening, if you made it this far, you might as well answer this question. Are you shooting JPEG? Or are you shooting RAW? Are you occasionally shooting JPEG? Maybe when you're taking your camera out, on family occasions or something like that. Or are you always shooting RAW because you always want to have the flexibility of maximum, editability after the fact? Editability must be a word.
Is now.
Yeah. So, let us know. You can get in touch. Send us a message on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. You'll find us there.
Oh my!
I find us there. So again, if you are listening to the audio version of this podcast, be reminded that we are also in YouTube. We're on YouTube, where you can not only listen to our sultry voices, but see our lovely faces in full Technicolor. If this podcast was too long for you to follow on YouTube, then be reminded that we're also on all the audio platforms where you can listen to our lovely voices in the car. Tommy. Oh,
I haven't said his name for a while.
Yes.
Welcome back, Tommy.
Welcome back, Tommy. Exactly. So yeah. Well, that being said, we've come to the end of episode 108 of the Camera Check podcast. Remember, send us a message. Always great to hear from you. We've had some really nice messages over the last couple of weeks. We're able to give some technical assistance, which is always good.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that'll help y'all. And
was that y'all?
Y'all. See y'all again next week.